I hate to say this, but my most learned friend forgets that Aristotle defended this charge most strongly and therefore said that emotions are as much a part of a human being's life as the intellect is. No man, woman can survive or exist in this world without emotions.
Let us not forget, my lord, Plato has warned us that a poet is almost like a prophet when inspired to the extreme. But one has to consider if this inspiration can always guide him on the true path.
If my learned friend will excuse my saying so, Plato himself called the poet a prophet. A prophet, my lord, can always guide a human being to follow the best path in life. Who other than a poet, or as my learned friend says, a prophet, is more worthy and suitable to provide the best teachings to mankind? Teach them the correct methods of behavior and thought? So, my lord, this charge against poets and artists is truly baseless. That they have been called prophets in itself is evident of the moral power they have and the authority they exercise on the minds and souls of people.
Your Honor, as Plato had clearly pointed out, poets, painters, sculptors, and all other artists should be banished from the ideal state. They are detrimental to the growth of society and will lead the people to wrong paths.
My lord, if we do what Plato has suggested, then we run a great risk of ruining and destroying our society. Poets, painters, and all other artists are actually the saviors of society. They provide us with a sense of beauty, a picture of nature, and most importantly, a visualization of God Himself. Only when they paint and write, we come to know the vastness and the greatness of nature. The question of their banishment does not even arise.
Gentlemen, I have listened to both your arguments. You about the unworthiness of poets, artists, sculptors, painters, and you for the greatness of all the artists, poets, painters, sculptors, everyone. To a great extent, the charges brought about by Plato against poets and all artists do appear to be very justified on the first look. But when I consider Aristotle's defense against all these charges of Plato, one tends to agree with Aristotle on the other hand. The critic Butcher has very correctly pointed out that a poet is a prophet, and he recreates and reproduces reality in a most sensible way. Poets, painters, sculptors, and all other artists are actually harbingers of peace, goodwill, inner strength, and such an immense variety of beauty that exists in this world. So I guess, gentlemen, in this case, Aristotle wins the case.
Excellent, sir. This is really surely that students are going to get benefited about this presentation and enactment of this charges made against Plato and Aristotle. So let us now switch over to the discussion of today, that is Plato's theory of imitation, and we have Professor G.T. Parsania with us. So sir, please, I welcome you, and let us switch over to the slide, please.
Plato was a Greek philosopher. He was born in 428 BC and died in 347 BC. Socrates was his great friend and teacher throughout his life. Actually, Socrates did not teach in any accepted sense of the word. We find Socrates dialogue and Socrates method in Plato's Republic. Republic consists of 42 dialogues. This book covers a discussion on many topics, particularly education, art, poetry, and metaphysics. In this dialogues, Socrates speaks much as in real life. Plato has idealized Socrates somewhat. Next slide, please.
Yes.
Socrates was an
Is this? Yes. Please, please. Next.
Literary criticism begins with Plato. He was the first critic to point out the imitative and aesthetic characteristics of art. Plato's greatest contribution to the art of criticism is his concept of mimesis. The Greek meaning of the word the English meaning of the word mimesis is imitation. All art is imitative by nature. Artist imitates an object or life and thus reproduces a slice of life. Next.
Yes.
Plato was a moralist. He was an idealist philosopher. He was concerned with literature only so far as it affected social welfare and morality. He was convinced that in literature there existed positive hindrance to the attainment of true knowledge and unfavorable influence to the highest attainment of personality. Poetry was no longer to be the ultimate authority in the conduct of morals. Next. According to Plato, poet is a possessed creature. He speaks in a divine frenzy. He is divinely inspired. The poet writes by the reason of natural endowment and inspiration of a non-rational kind. In this state, he chooses to be a normal human being. I quote, "The poet is between a prophet and a madman, sometimes one, sometimes the other, and sometimes both." Plato suggests this view in Phaedro. Next. The third kind is the madness of those who are possessed by the muses. This enters into a delicate and virgin soul, and their inspiring frenzy awakens lyrical. So, Plato thinks that poet lacks art and volition of his own. He is merely a passive vehicle, and so he attacks poet and poetry in his Republic. The first charge against poet is that the poet write